Ready to get started. Uh, my name's Jimmy Chu. I am the Director of Customer Success at ClearScale, and you are attending the Windows Migration webinar. We're going to have a guest speaker from SFMatch to talk about their journey in migrating Windows-based workloads to AWS to achieve high availability. Okay. So for our agenda for this webinar, I'll introduce our speakers. We also have a speaker from AWS joining us today. We'll talk about the SFMatch journey. We'll hop into a discussion around AWS for Microsoft workloads. I will discuss the design and implementation and the migration steps for moving SFMatch to AWS. And SFMatch will share some of their insights and future roadmap on what they would like to do in AWS moving forward. And then we'll open it up to questions and answers. And at any time during the webinar, feel free, if you've got a question, drop it in the Q&A box, and we'll keep a queue going and answer everything that we can. All right. So I'm going to introduce our speakers. Dennis Tomatos, he's a manager at SFMatch, which is a matching program at the American Academy of Ophthalmology. He's been there in that position for over 12 years and runs a medical student and physician training match for many surgical specialties. He's also been an administrative director of the American Lung Association of the East Bay and served a few years as executive director for Los Lupeños de San Jose Cultural Center in, you guessed it, San Jose, California. And from AWS, we have Luis Molina. He's a partner solutions architect at AWS who's focused on Microsoft workloads running on AWS web services. And prior to AWS, he worked at Microsoft in business productivity, and he's got over 20 years of experience working both in solution delivery and IT professional in a variety of industries, all on the Microsoft platform. He currently works with partners like ClearScale to help our customers to grow, build, and extend their Microsoft workloads on the AWS cloud. Myself, I'm Jimmy Chu, Director of Customer Success at ClearScale. I've been in various IT functions and DevOps automation space for 20 years, and I work closely with our customers to help them gain the most value out of cloud services at AWS. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Dennis so he can talk a little bit about SFMatch.
Hello all, thank you for coming to the webinar today. I'm happy to be speaking to you. I did go through this journey, and it is indeed a journey, and you'll be glad you went through it once you're there. So a little background: the SFMatch, if you haven't heard of it, has been around since the late 70s. We do training matching is what we do for surgical specialties, really across a wide spectrum of medicine. Of course, we're housed within the Academy of Ophthalmology, so we do both ophthalmology matches. And our system has evolved over many years, is now, of course, on the cloud, and very pleased with how it's working. Basically, we're a centralized matching service for clinical training. So we handle a lot of file submissions, electronic file submissions. We run the matching algorithm that pairs up the trainers with the trainees. We run a lot of statistical data analysis reports using business objects, and a very high customer satisfaction as kind of a boutique matching service. It's kind of exciting to help the next generation get into their careers. So our sort of challenges is we were in a sort of fixed infrastructure in Santa Clara, and we had very large seasonal spikes in workload. We would have the system go down sometimes without explanation, and kept putting more equipment and money into it, and the cost of support was just continually inflating, and of course no scalability with a single site. It was hard to do any sort of migration. So we started to take a look around at the cloud. We saw people around us migrating, and the cloud characteristics seemed to be the right solution for us at the time. We needed scalability. We wanted to deal with load spikes, which were a going concern. Our sponsor wanted to see faster site changes and development changes in a shorter period of time, which we couldn't deliver at that time. And the single site approach just made changes really disruptive. And now we'll bring Luis in to talk from AWS. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. So yeah, my name is Luis Molina. I'm a solutions architect at Amazon Web Services. And yeah, today I'd like to go over, some of the benefits of running Microsoft workloads on AWS. So, a little known fact is that, according to, we've had some research done, AWS runs over 50% of Windows workloads in the cloud. And it's nearly double, the next closest competitor. And in fact, AWS was the first major cloud platform to offer Windows Server instances back in 2008. And today, hundreds and thousands of customers across all industries, including Adobe, Autodesk, Capital One, and General Electric, trust AWS to run business-critical Windows workloads, such as .NET applications, line of business apps, SQL Server, and Active Directory, to name a few. And there's got a great uptime story. Business-critical applications such as Microsoft SQL Server, they require strict SLAs for application uptime and require highly available infrastructure. And the AWS cloud infrastructure is built around regions and availability zones, which are designed to meet the availability requirements of the most demanding applications. And from a performance perspective, lots of customers like Capital One, they've reported better performance on AWS than on premise. And also, a great benefit is it's a lower cost of ownership with flexible licensing. The Amazon Elastic Compute Cloud, or EC2, Windows Server instances, they let you pay for only the resources you need. So you pay as you go, and you're able to scale up and down based on demand. So you can choose from a variety of purchasing options, including on-demand, reserved instances, and dedicated instances, as well as dedicated hosts. And we're constantly updating our feature set. Like recently, we announced support for disabling hyperthreading, and that really helps customers optimize licensing costs for Windows workloads. And AWS also helps you save money on your existing investments in Microsoft applications with options like bringing your own licenses over. For many applications, you can also purchase Windows Server licenses along with your EC2 instances. And of course, there's endless possibilities with our partner ecosystem, which is by far the largest of any cloud provider. With cloud migration experience and tens of thousands of consulting and technology partners like ClearScale. And here's just like a view of our global infrastructure. AWS infrastructure spans the globe with 21 regions broken down into 66 availability zones and over 180 points of presence, for our content delivery network. And, just to go into a little more detail there, our regions consist of 2 or more availability zones, which, you would consider to be a data center. And each availability zone consists of 1 or more data centers, each with its own redundant power, networking, they're on different floodplains, and housed in different facilities. AWS availability zones see less than 2 milliseconds latency between each other. So this provides, some unique opportunities, to leverage that by, enabling high availability capabilities and optimizing license costs. Like, for example, you can leverage, the basic high availability capabilities of SQL Standard Edition across multiple availability zones, instead of having to purchase, like an expensive SQL Enterprise Edition, to get the same type of high availability capabilities that you would have to on premise. And AWS, continually expands its services to support many cloud workloads. AWS now has more than 100 services, and Microsoft workloads and .NET applications are first-class citizens on Amazon Web Services. And AWS provides more services and more functionality within these services. For example, AWS offers security services that provide fine-grained control. AWS has many security certifications and provides support for highly available applications. And AWS also has experience building reliable, secure, scalable, and cost-effective infrastructure for active customers every month. And at AWS, customers drive over 90% of our innovation. Nearly all of our service and feature launches originated with a customer need. And AWS offers over 100 EC2 instance types. And AWS also offers more than 60 different Amazon Machine Images, or AMIs, for Microsoft workloads. And earlier this year, AWS announced the availability of Windows Server 2019 Machine Images for Amazon EC2. Windows Server 2019 offers a variety of new features, including smaller and more efficient Windows containers, support for Linux containers for application modernization, and the app compatibility feature on demand. Windows Server 2019 Machine Images are available in all public AWS regions and in AWS GovCloud. So we'll talk about a couple of use cases. Each customer has their own unique migration story, but a lot of these stories, tend to follow specific themes. So, a customer could be looking at a straight lift and shift type migration approach, like a data center consolidation or aging hardware. Or, perhaps, they want to optimize their workloads on AWS by migrating to a managed service, like our managed SQL service or Active Directory. Another use case we've seen is the need to modernize .NET or other types of business applications, and it makes sense to either refactor, replatform, or containerize apps. So you might have a .NET framework app that you want to move to .NET Core or on a Linux, things like that. And finally, some customers might wish to innovate and drive business agility by integrating their applications with the rest of the AWS service offerings, like our artificial intelligence or machine learning services. And to help you get there, AWS provides a wide variety of migration services to help ease your cloud journey. These tools can help you migrate, back off of Amazon Web Services as well. So there's no risk of being locked in. And just to touch on some of them, we have our AWS Server Migration Service, which automates the migration of your Hyper-VM VMware virtual machines to the AWS cloud. The Server Migration Service, what it does is it incrementally replicates your server VMs as cloud-hosted Amazon Machine Images that are ready for deployment on EC2. We also have the Database Migration Service, which helps you migrate databases to Amazon Web Services quickly and securely. Your source database remains fully operational during this migration, minimizing downtime to applications that rely on the database. And the Database Migration Service can migrate your data to and from most widely used commercial and open source database engines. The Database Migration Service supports, homogeneous migrations such as Oracle to Oracle, as well as heterogeneous migrations between different database platforms. So, for example, Oracle or Microsoft SQL Server to Amazon Aurora, and we can provide, schema conversion and all that. And AWS also provides a wide variety of data transfer tools. So, we have the AWS Snowball, which is a device that you plug into your local network that can transport, physically petabytes of data to the data center. Or there's also our storage gateways, which is basically a virtual machine appliance. You set up on your network, and that provides a file gateway services. So it appears as a regular file share, and you can transport data directly as a file share to your S3. And there's also managed services, that are set up to cater, to Microsoft workloads. For example, we have Elastic Beanstalk, which makes it very easy to publish .NET web applications. All you have to do is provide your code, and Elastic Beanstalk takes care of the rest from a hosting perspective. And there's also RDS, which is our relational database service. It's a managed database service, which has Microsoft SQL Server as one of its database engines. And more recently, there's AWS FSx, which is our new managed Windows file share service. And Amazon Web Service also provides full support for .NET applications and Windows workloads. Additionally, we provide the latest and greatest in .NET Core, Core 2.1, and including Lambda, X-Ray, and CodeStar for building modern serverless and DevOps-centric solutions. These provide deep integrations with tools that developers are already familiar with and using to build .NET apps like Visual Studio and Visual Studio Team Services. So what this means is that your developers they can work with the way they're accustomed to, and they're still able to get the breadth of the entire AWS platform. And AWS also offers a range of resources, tools, and the GitHub community to easily navigate the platform and get started quickly. And just, there's many flexible options for licensing Microsoft workloads on AWS. The simplest solution is to purchase license included instances from AWS. In this scenario, you purchase the instance, it includes a license for Windows or SQL Server, whatever you require, and you pay as you go. So you only pay for what you use. And then another option is if, for example, you've already purchased Microsoft licenses, you could bring your own licenses, which we call BYOL, to AWS. And this approach allows you to capitalize on both your existing license investments and all the benefits of running Microsoft workloads on AWS. So there's two ways to bring your licenses to AWS: by running your Windows workloads on EC2 dedicated infrastructure, or by using Microsoft License Mobility through software assurance on shared or default tenant EC2. It's important to note, though, that if you choose to bring your own licenses to AWS, you're responsible for ensuring you follow the stipulations of your license management agreement with Microsoft. And we provide another managed service called License Manager, which allows you to track these and prevent EC2 instance launch, for example, if you're running out of licenses, things like that. Another option is if you have active software assurance from eligible Microsoft software, you can do license mobility that way as well, and it allows you to take advantage of your existing license investments to move to shared or default tenant EC2. And you could also use the AWS virtual machine export tool to bring virtual machine images from your on-premises environment to AWS, including both Microsoft software licenses and virtual machine configurations. And customers who wish to use license mobility can purchase EC2 instances with licensed Microsoft Windows Server pre-installed and bring their existing licenses for products like SQL Server, Microsoft SharePoint Over, and more. And finally, things that you should be aware of. We've got multiple programs available to help drive Windows migrations to the AWS cloud. For example, we have proof of concept programs, AWS service credit programs, and rapid migration programs. And all these programs and services can be leveraged by our AWS partner network. And ClearScale, for example, can help determine which program is best suited for you and your environment. And now I'd like to hand it back to Dennis. Thanks.
Thank you, Luis. That was excellent. Once you've gone through this, you'll understand how much information is available to you at AWS. It's really astounding. So our journey, we saw that cloud characteristics seemed to be the right solution, but we literally had no expertise in this area at all. So I asked a local executive at another tech company that I knew for advice, was referred to a local consulting firm. We hired the firm. They did a build out and got it running. They proved that it worked, but they kind of left us hanging. There was no hosting solution. So with the proof that it worked, I went back to ClearScale and found, went back to AWS and found ClearScale as a partner. And our journey began there and it's been going strong ever since. So, so far, it's just been astounding for us and for our company. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jimmy.
All right, and I'm going to give a quick introduction to ClearScale, and I'll talk about the work that we did for implementation and migration of SFMatch. So ClearScale, we're in 6 offices across the U.S. We've been in business about 10 years. We completed well over 600 projects in AWS, many of those migrations, and we hold 7 AWS competencies. We are a premier consulting partner, so this is a top tier designation. I believe there's maybe 30 in North America, and we have competencies in healthcare, migrations, DevOps, nonprofit, data analytics, IoT, and mobile. And what this is a statement that we understand how to be successful in these areas, and we're at the level that we can augment and act as a AWS professional services themselves, right? So we have the training behind that and the connections at AWS to get any project completed. We have a variety of services. We can handle any project end to end, whether it's just coming in to do architecture design or develop cloud strategies with you, to building cloud native solutions right out of the gate, the heavy lifting of actually developing and deploying and migrations of workloads to AWS. We always use a foundation of automation, right? We hear a lot about infrastructure as code. At ClearScale, we live and breathe that. We've done a lot of work in the big data, IoT, machine learning area. We have developers in-house, so we can not only help with the migrations, but we can also help with refactoring apps if needed to take advantage of these cloud native services at AWS. Also, we can build apps or portions of apps from the ground up if needed. We have a lot of experience with regulated workloads. So if there's compliance in somewhere in your environment, whether it's SOC compliance, PCI, HIPAA compliance, we've seen all of those. We've worked in all of those areas. And then we also do managed services. So once everything's up and running, we can either completely manage that infrastructure for you or implement a level of management to hand back off to your operations teams or anything in between. Okay, so let me talk about the process, right? The actual process of getting things going all the way through we're live and running in AWS. Now, this isn't a process that we designed ourselves. This is working in close collaboration with AWS and leveraging all of the feedback and information gathered from all sorts of AWS partners, AWS ProServes, and most importantly, real customer experiences, right? And this is built over many thousands of migrations, right? So we go through a discovery process to figure out what are our requirements, get our bearings on what is the state of the infrastructure and the organization. We go into a design where we determine the services that we're going to deploy and document tool chains that we're going to use, processes, and then the overall migration strategy. Once we have that directional accuracy on the design, we move into development, where this is where I'm talking about the infrastructure as code as our bread and butter. We start developing infrastructure provisioning, the configuration management pieces, and anything related to code release, building up application code, and so on. Once we have our infrastructure codified, we move on to deployment. And this is deploying one or many environments in an automated fashion. Once we get environment deployed, then we go through a validation period, right? We want to, one, test to make sure the application is functional, and two, test that the infrastructure and the architecture is working as it is designed, right? If want to make sure that if we're implementing auto scaling, that that's actually working. We're going to document everything around that infrastructure. We're going to document the processes, and then we move on to the actual cutover or the migration portion, which is planning out the migration, doing what we call a mock cutover, right? This is testing all of the migration steps without shifting live traffic. Once that is successful, we use that same process to do the live cutover and move the traffic over. And again, I can't stress enough about documentation. It's a great time to go back, update anything that's changed so that when the system is live, we have documentation that accurately reflects what's running. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the different pieces, right? The decisions that were made along the way. So migration strategy. There are many different migration patterns. We can simply take and do lift and shift. We copy a VM and convert it into AWS, and now it's running. There's replatforming, where we're targeting something different, right? This could be, we have a Microsoft SQL Server running on premise. We're going to move that to RDS as a service. So we're no longer managing the underlying infrastructure. There's repurchasing, which is completely moving a function to a SaaS product, right? This is common for like credit card processing, right? Stop building your own credit card processing and then just use a service, something like Stripe or something in that area to handle that functionality. And then there's refactoring, where we are taking that time to take a step back, look at the application, redesign it for fully cloud native or as close to cloud native design, and develop new code, rebuild that application basically. So for SFMatch, Dennis mentioned there were issues with scalability and reliability of services, and that was our primary goal that we wanted to go after. It's also the replatforming was the best bang for the buck for this project. So as we go from rehosting to replatforming to refactoring, you get a higher level of value out of these different migration patterns. There's also a higher level of cost associated with doing those in that order. And so we knew that with SFMatch, there were a lot of things on the horizon that they wanted to get into. They wanted to leverage like machine learning. There was a lot more functionality and integrations they wanted to build into their infrastructure. And so while those strategies were being developed, we went with replatforming as our initial step into AWS and gain the highest value at the lowest cost. And so the next thing we move on to once we have our strategy is really deciding on the architecture. What services do we use? How does all of these pieces fit together, right? It's a cloud, everything just floats around there. And so there are a few concepts that we covered, right? We covered, and Luis mentioned this, their availability zones. It changes the mindset of how you do network architecture in AWS. So multi-AZ design is already super resilient, super reliable, right? So we went in our design for SFMatch, we're deploying into multiple availability zones, make sure that those services are up and running at all times. We're using Elastic Compute Services, EC2, to host the application servers. We're using the managed services with Elastic Load Balancers. Databases moved to RDS. There was a couple of flavors. There was Microsoft SQL Server and also MySQL on the back end. Active Directory. We also built DFS for file sharing. And then for visibility into this environment, we have CloudTrail, CloudWatch, so we can see all the event, or we're logging, and we can visualize the events that are happening in AWS, such as auto scaling spun up a new instance. We have more load. An instance had errors and was replaced by auto scaling, or somebody logged in, created a new database server. All of those events tracked in CloudTrail. CloudWatch gives us that visibility into the metrics, right? How are we doing on CPU load of different services or network throughput? Those foundational monitoring metrics. And for storage, right? We're using the S3 storage, simple storage service, for its reliability, and simple email service. We didn't want to manage another instance or another application, so email just gets sent to SES, and it's routed to its proper destination. Route 53 supports external DNS for the infrastructure, and then we use AWS config to keep a running log of all of the resources and changes made to them. Right. This provides really good forensics and audit trails for everything that's happening in this environment, and then also the auto scaling features. This is a key, right? This is a key component. We're using auto scaling in this scenario to deal with a couple of different use cases. One is for horizontal scaling, right? This is to handle cyclical loads. So at peak times, we'll have an auto scaling group continue to spin up more servers based on a threshold that we set for CPU utilization, for example. That keeps this environment elastic so that you're only paying, or SFMatch is only paying for the number of servers they need for any given load at any period of time, right? For other services, some stateful services, we're implementing auto scaling for failover. So we don't want to scale these particular services up based on load, because they're doing processing or analytics on the back end, and we don't need that elasticity there. But what we need is for that service to be reliable and available. So should the server fail, the auto scaling group will bring that server back up in the other availability zone. So that's how we establish this, the availability and resiliency for SFMatch. And also on the RDS side, we also have master RDS instances with standbys in the second availability zone. So in a nutshell, if something happens to a data center, or an availability zone, if it's of that magnitude, like this infrastructure continues to operate, doesn't miss a beat, and that's very powerful. Okay, along with the architecture design of where these resources are deployed, selecting what type of services to implement, we also need to think about how are we going to provision and manage deployments, right? Because getting it up and running is one thing. Dennis had mentioned that there was a need for faster iterations on code releases, right? New features need to be deployed rapidly. And so we also knew that there was high potential for more changes down the road. So we wanted to keep it very simple. We're using Amazon Machine Images as our base operating system that gets deployed. We patch machines at that level, and the auto-scaling group can replace all machines with a new patched AMI. Very simple to manage. The infrastructure is codified using CloudFormation. So we have CloudFormation templates that are there to manage the resources, change the resources. If we want to turn around and deploy, I need another QA environment. We use a CloudFormation template, we put in some parameters, and we can bring up a QA environment within minutes. And we chose CloudFormation because it's native to AWS. It's integrated with all AWS tooling. And another important thing is it is supported by AWS. So later on, during operations, if we're creating new CloudFormation templates, if SFMatch is working on CloudFormation, they encounter an error, they need some help, AWS support is there to answer the questions and help them walk through it. And for release management, deployment of code, code updates, and so on, we selected CodeDeploy. It can handle multiple applications on the same server instance, and it can manage those deployments independently, right? There are also, great deployment options. We can have what they call a rolling update, where instances are taken out of service one by one, new code, new app is deployed on top of it, and then put back into service rotation, and then it rolls through the next server until that entire auto-scaling group is done. Okay, so that's one option. There's also options to do what folks call the blue-green swap, right? So we deploy a completely new set of instances with the new version of the code, and we swap all of them into the load balancer and take out all of the instances that have the old version of code. So it's almost instantaneous change of version. And again, CodeDeploy is AWS native. All the support is there, right? There's lots of forums, there's videos. If you do encounter issues, we can contact AWS support and they'll get on the line and resolve them. Okay, and then migration and service cutover, right? This can be unique for each organization. Really depends on quite a few features or factors. So during cutover planning, we have to understand the networking requirements, right? DNS. We need to understand where the data is, any data that needs to be synced, databases that need to be synced, the size of the database, how long does the sync take, can we do active replication on that data, how does the application respond when we switch it from one environment to the other, what is our rollback plan, and also the type of migration, right? What is the amount of downtime or change window can we take to complete this migration? That's going to play into a lot of the strategy. For SFMatch, we were able to take a brief maintenance window in which we could back up and restore the database, get everything up and running. We could test, and during the mock cutover, we created a process that was, refreshing the application code, making sure that the files on the file shares are synced into DFS on AWS. backing up and restoring the database, and then test. Very important. We want to know that when we perform this mock cutover, that we were able to bring all services up. Application is fully functional. We don't see any issues there. If that's the case and we reach success on the mock cutover, that is the process that we're going to follow for the live cutover. We follow that same process. At the end, we actually shift the live traffic over. And then very important is to monitor that infrastructure for any deviations from what we think is normal. Okay, and I will hand this back over to Dennis.
Okay, thank you, Jimmy. It was a lot of information, a lot of good information. And I guess I'll be wrapping up a little bit here to talk about benefits and the benefits realized. So certainly high availability. We have a very stable environment, infrastructure resilience. We've had no issues with tax or downtime. The cost stabilized for us, so we can predict what we're going to be spending. And our load spikes are just handled, and they're very cost effective. When we see those large load spikes, it's very manageable for us. We're able to definitely have more efficiency and more agility in our development. So the benefits have been ongoing since we migrated, but they just continue. And as Amazon continues to develop new services, it just allows us to look forward to more and more benefits. Okay, and I think with that, we're going to talk back to Jimmy. And I'll finish this roadmap here. So we got better functionality, agility, high value components, infrastructure management, and where we're headed is definitely some really exciting things. We're looking at machine learning, integration of our call center systems with the online matching system, that's our OMS, integrating our billing, and ClearScale helped us to migrate to Stripe off of an older provider, and then also expanding our payment options into ACH and other methods of payment to give our larger customers, medical schools, more flexibility as well, and help save them some money as well. Overall, it's been it's a good plan ahead, and we have a lot to do. And the key takeaway for me is find a good partner that you're comfortable with, and they will help you navigate all these things. And this great presentation by Luis, all the details that Jimmy gave you as well. Once you have a good partner in place, you can start to reap the benefits. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to take a quick second to thank Luis and Dennis. This is the end of the presentation portion of the webinar. If anybody's got any questions, please feel free, drop them in the Q&A. And while you guys think about that, for this webinar, all attendees at this webinar, we invite you to give us a call. We can walk through a free migration assessment with you, maybe answer some questions that you have about migrating Windows workloads to AWS, and give you some insight on what's possible.